Well, welcome to the 36 Degrees North webinar here on preparing to come in strong as planning for a healthy company. And so we have with us Nate Brim, and you can tell by Nate's virtual background that Nate is a professional EOS implementer and has some strong branding going for him too. And today we are going to be talking, or Nate's going to be talking to us about a general overview with the EOS process, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and yeah, what's on the screen of how to get a grip on your business. And I can really give a strong plug for EOS and for Nate as well. So Nate is an EOS implementer with lots of companies. And do you do that statewide? Do you have companies you work with outside of Oklahoma too?
No, all the companies right now are in Oklahoma.
Okay. So Nate's doing that with lots of companies all over Oklahoma, and we utilize the Entrepreneurial Operating System at 36 Degrees North. And Nate is our EOS implementer for that. So he has walked us through that process to really help our company. And then we meet quarterly with Nate to really get traction for our company. So I want to highlight a few of the ways in which 36 Degrees North utilizes EOS, and Nate helps us with that. So it has really helped our team to understand where, like, I want to say the primary thing it has so helped us is it has helped our team have a direction in which we are headed. So we've got a primary direction of a 10-year goal that we are moving towards. And we established this a couple of years ago. And the EOS process also helps you to have in a 3-year target and a 1-year goal. And so just having those in place has been so helpful for our organization to really have the intentionality to set the direction of our organization. And some other ways in which we have utilized this process is that we set quarterly rocks that are all in tandem with helping us achieve that 1-year, 3-year target, 10-year aim. And so we, with Nate, actually come up with quarterly rocks, and he'll describe to you what rocks are about. And then we have a scorecard that help us to measure. They give us metrics on whether or not we are hitting those goals. And we go through that scorecard every single week. And it really is something that helps everybody on our team to be accountable for their area. And then we do our weekly staff meeting that we call a level 10 meeting. It's called a level 10 because you rate the meeting, and the hope is that you have 10 out of 10 meetings every single time. So we have a level 10 meeting every single week. We actually have ours on Tuesday mornings, so we had it today. And implementing those things for 36 Degrees North has really changed us, and Nate has walked through that process with us. So I want to introduce you guys to Nate Brim. Nate, give us a little bit of an overview of EOS.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Daniel.
Yeah.
No reason to have a meeting unless it is a level 10 meeting, right? Nobody likes those meetings that are not a 10. So when we set this up, it was healthy in a changing climate. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about applies to everything outside of a changing climate. I know we have the pandemic. I know we're going through a crisis. I know things are not normal right now. But as I was setting this up, a lot of these concepts in the EOS system, these are good anytime. I mean, we are going to get through this. We're going to get through the crisis. We're going to get through the pandemic. It's a matter of, are we going to be stronger or are we going to be weaker? We may have a smaller company. We may have fewer people. We may have less revenue, but we can still be a stronger company on the other side of it. So that's what I wanted to walk you through today. Like Daniel said, EOS is the Entrepreneurial Operating System, based on the book Traction by Gino Wickman, if anybody's familiar with that. So a lot of what you're going to hear is based on that system and that book. I do want to say, if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A or put them in the chat. I get sick of hearing myself talk for 30 or 45 minutes. So put questions in there if there's anything you want me to cover specifically up front, or if we're covering something, Daniel's going to monitor the chat and the Q&A, and he'll interrupt me and we'll get those questions answered. So the more interactive, I think, the better. Probably have 30 or 40 minutes of things that I want to cover, have plenty of time for questions, and I want you to get what you need from it as well. Anything on that, Daniel?
No, I think that's great. And we do really encourage you to jump in with questions here. So use the chat function. It is down at the bottom of the screen to the right. And jump in with questions for Nate as we go throughout this webinar.
And if you think of anything you want me to cover up front, if you're familiar with the book, familiar with the system, or anything you want to know. So throw those questions out there and Daniel will interrupt me and we'll get them answered. All right, so let's get going. I find that in business, there are 5 frustrations that every business faces. So we'll get there in just a second, but I want to go over the agenda first. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Agenda first. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of the EOS system. So probably 6 or 7 minutes of EOS in general, so the Entrepreneur Operating System in general. Then I'm going to go into the using data and scorecards like Daniel was talking about, setting priorities, getting those rocks and those goals set, going through the meeting agenda, and we already talked about the level 10 meeting, having a level 10 meeting and going over that agenda, and then we're going to conclude. Daniel knows I like my Abraham Lincoln quotes, talking about him all the time. Thought this picture was relatively current as well, because it looks like he's been through quarantine and hasn't seen a barber in a while either. So, Abraham Lincoln said the best way to predict the future is to create it. Had that conversation with my 11-year-old the other day. He was acting like a child. And I said, I'm going to predict the future. I got my crystal ball out, got my Abraham Lincoln quote out, said, if you continue to act like this, here's what's going to happen. You're not going to have your iPad. You're not going to have a treat. You're not going to do this. I can predict the future. If these behaviors continue, then this is what the outcome is going to be. The same thing happens in a positive light. If you have these behaviors, then this is what you're going to get. So it's the same way in business. If you do these things, then you can predict the future. You can create the future. There's a lot of stuff that we can't control. We can't control a global pandemic. We can't control COVID-19, but we can control a lot of things in our business, and those are the things we're going to concentrate. So like I said, find that there's 5 frustrations that every business goes through. The first one being control. You probably feel that more now than ever. These are magnified in times of crisis. So you feel might feel a lack of control. I like a van analogy. So there's a van hurtling down the highway at 60 miles an hour, and the back door of the van's open, and you as the business owner is actually chasing the van and running behind the van, trying to get in the van and trying to control your business. That's what a lot of business owners find and feel like. I have owned several businesses. I know I felt like that in my business, and really implementing a system, implementing EOS helps you gain more control of your business. Actually get in the van instead of just chasing it down the highway at 60 miles an hour. Second one is profit. And to clarify there, that's lack of profit. So you're not making the money that you thought you were going to make. The third one is people. This is a big one. Usually it's people within the organization that cause a lot of frustrations, not the processes, not the sales, not the revenue. It's people that usually drive those. So people are typically a big frustration in business as well. So hitting the ceiling. Businesses don't grow like this. They don't grow in a straight line. Businesses typically grow like this. They hit some sort of ceiling. Something gets hard, something gets stuck. What got us here is not necessarily going to get us to the next level. And they can do one of 2 things or 3 things after they hit the ceiling. They can break through the ceiling and keep growing. They can plateau and not go anywhere, or they can fail. You know all the stats about 50% of businesses fail within the first 5 years at SBA. You can look at all those stats. There's a reason why a lot of businesses fail. They get to a certain point and they can't break through that ceiling. So there's a frustration of hitting the ceiling and then breaking through the ceiling. And that's that feeling of being stuck. So I assume a lot of you have felt these same frustrations in your business or you know, what you're going through. And I know I felt that in business. I'm sure Daniel feels that, you know, now and has in the past. And a lot of these EOS tools and systems help you with these frustrations. Yeah.
Hey, Nate, I appreciate your whiteboard skills here.
Yeah, you like that?
Great use.
I'm telling you. You know, it's that whole builds engagement. So what we do is keep it simple. So there's 136 different things that you guys are dealing with on a daily basis. We boil it down to 6 key components of business. So there's 6 key components of every business. And to the extent that you can strengthen those 6 key components, all of those other 136 things filter down into one of those 6 things. So I was going to cover the high-level overview of what those 6 things are, and then we're going to talk about a few of them today. So we start with a model. So it's the EOS model is really a journey. So I talk about the EOS journey. So it's the journey to strengthen the 6 key components of business. So the first key component of business is the vision component. So the vision component is getting everybody 100% on the same page with where you're going and how you plan to get there. That's the vision component. The second key component is the people component. That's getting the right people for your unique organization. Every organization is unique. Everybody defines people a different way. So it's getting the right people for your organization. Third key component, which is one of the things we're going to talk about today, is the data component. It is running your business on objective information and data rather than egos and emotions and a lot of those things that tend to run entrepreneurial companies. So as you define the vision of the organization and get the right people in the organization, you start looking at data, a lot of issues come up. Not issues in the sense that, you know, a lot of the maybe younger generation, last 10 or 15 years, I think that word's changed in the last 10 or 15 years. Issues to me is anything unresolved. So it's anything unresolved in your business. So that is an opportunity, that is an obstacle, that is a challenge. It's a lot of different things in your business, but issues are anything unresolved in your business. It's getting good at setting those issues up, knocking them down, making them go away for the greater good of the organization. So that's the fourth key component. The fifth key component is the process component. So the process component is making sure that we have all of the right processes documented, followed by everybody. It makes your business more scalable. It makes it more profitable. And frankly, it makes it more fun if everything is process driven and followed by everybody. And then the sixth key component is the traction component. So the traction component and the vision component are obviously on different sides of the model. That's on purpose because you can't have vision without traction. Jim Collins says that success in business is 1% vision and 99% execution. So the traction component is the one that gets probably the least amount of love when it comes to these 6 key components, and the one that we concentrate on the most. That's why the book is called Traction. That's why EOS is all about executing on that vision. So there's kind of the high level overview. We're going to cover, there's 2 concepts, tools that we use in each one of these 6 key components. We're going to concentrate on the data component, the issues component, and the traction component. So what I wanted to do is make sure that you had an understanding of this is part of a bigger model. There's a big puzzle and a big picture to the EOS model. We're going to cover just a few of these tools today. I think they're still helpful. I still think they're useful. I think anything you can implement from the tools that we're going to talk about today will help your business, understanding that it also plugs into a bigger picture as well. We good? Daniel, you good?
Good.
Cool. All right. So wanted to start with the quote from Gino Wickman, said, vision without traction is solutionation. Kind of what I just talked about as far as vision and traction being on opposite sides of the model. Ideas are easy. I say that not lightly, but there's a lot of ideas out there, but you have to have traction, have to be able to execute on those ideas, or it's just a hallucination. All right, so let's start with the data component. So the data component is comprised of two different tools or disciplines that we use in the EOS model. My favorite quote of the day, I don't have very many more, so I'll stop doing quotes, but this is my favorite one of the day by Jim Barksdale. If we have data, let's look at it. If all we have are opinions, let's go with mine. So let's look at the data. Let's look at the objective information. Egos and emotions aren't a bad way to run a business to a certain extent. You have to have that gut feeling and you have to have the ego and the emotion to get through, but you really have to pair it and complement it with actual objective information and data. All right, so let's look at a scorecard. So the scorecard is the first tool that we use within the data component. And a scorecard gives you an absolute pulse on the business. So it gives you 5 to 15 key metrics, and we'll go over an example here in just a second. But it gives you really a pulse on your business. So the way we come up with a scorecard is you go through and you pretend like you're on a desert island. And if you're on a desert island and somebody gives you one piece of paper that has 5 to 15 numbers on it, what are those numbers that you want to show that you did the right things in the past week? So did you do the right things in your business to move it forward over the last week? Are you going to be on track for the next week is what the scorecard measures. So I think it's important to also note that sports teams do a good job and sports in general do a good job of keeping score. That's how they know if you win a game or you win in sports. I think we need the same thing in business. So we need to know if we won. I can ask you, how's your business going? And you can tell me how you think it's going or how you feel it's going. But I like having a weekly scorecard that shows whether you're winning or not. I mean, it gives you an absolute pulse on your business. So let's go through what is included on the scorecard. So we have to have measurables. Like I said, 5 to 15 measurables. Ideally, these are weekly activity-based numbers. And to the extent that we can make these leading indicators, the better. I'm sure that everybody is at least somewhat familiar with that term, but leading indicators will predict what's going to happen in the future. So instead of saying the number of sales that you got, let's back into what generates a sale. So the first thing is a demo scheduled, or an email sent, or whatever it might be. What goes into making that sale, and let's make those leading indicators. So 5 to 15 measurables on a weekly basis. Here's a few examples: weekly revenue, cash balance, sales calls, sales meetings, proposals. Some of those are leading indicators. Some of them are lagging indicators. I use the analogy that a scorecard should look like the dash and the windshield of a car. So if you're sitting in your car, you look in the rearview mirror, it's a small little mirror and it's a small portion. Those should be what is looking behind. So those are lagging indicators. We should have a few lagging indicators that show where we've been. The speedometer and the gas gauge and everything else that's sitting in front of you shows where you are right now. Shows how much gas you have right now. We can see how much cash we have right now. That shows us where we are now. But a big portion of what you're looking at is the windshield. You're looking ahead, you're looking forward. So to the extent that we can get really good about looking forward and all the leading indicators, the better. So having 5 to 15 measurables. Second thing we do is add a goal for each one of these measurables. So what should it be on a weekly basis? How can we keep score? Did we win last week? Did we do the right things? Did it keep us on track? Daniel, can you give us an example of what's on your scorecard? Just one thing.
Yeah, there's a couple things that we measure the amount of members that we have currently at 36 Degrees North. And then we've got website clicks. And then is our budget on track? So just some simple, there's a lot of them that are on here too, but we measure those every week.
Cool. Has it changed with any of your behavior or helped? If you're going to have to report this on a weekly basis, has it changed how you do things?
Yeah. I just know, really even personally, being accountable for something it helps me to know what I'm going to focus my energies on that week. And so if I'm going to report that back to our leadership team, I want to make sure that I'm hitting my marks, because our membership or our sales very much go into our revenue or our operating as well.
Yeah.
While we're on scorecard here, Nate, we've got a question from the absolutely brilliant Sarah Stevenson. And she says, would you ever recommend changing your scorecard metrics during a time of crisis like right now?
Yeah, and most companies that I talk to have changed their scorecard and updated it with a few things. So what is important more now than ever? So most of them have changed or added, if they don't have it, some sort of cash balance. Or a lot of teams don't measure sales on a weekly basis, they do it on a monthly basis, but they've gone to measuring it on a weekly basis. Number of retained clients, or if there's any drop clients, or what that retention rate is. What we're doing is trying to find a trend and trying to be able to predict the future. So I think that absolutely changing it to what is most important to you right now. And a lot of times that's cash, that's retention. I've seen people add the number of phone calls, because I think that a personal touch and getting in better with your customers and your vendors, and making sure you have that communication. So just number of phone calls has been on scorecards that have been updated.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I like keeping the regular scorecard items on there, and then adding a couple what's most important right now over the next 60 days, 90 days, 6 months, what's going to keep you afloat and what's going to push you forward. So absolutely. And
Cool.
she is absolutely brilliant. I will agree with you on that.
You want to field some other questions here? Or are you in the middle of scorecard?
I just brought up the questions here. I think we're going to talk about both of those. I think we'll address both of those, Eric. If we don't, then make sure we do. I think we're going to talk about, I know we're going to talk about goals here in a little bit. And then bouncing off that 10, we're going to talk about 10-year vision here in a minute too. So I might punt those just for a few minutes, because we're going to get there.
Sounds good. We'll circle back around there.
All right, so looking at the scorecard. What did you say, Daniel?
I said we'll just circle back around it.
Oh yeah, awesome. All right, so then can you hear me there? You good? Okay, cool. I was getting a message there. All right, so then putting who is accountable for each one of these measurables. So who is responsible for driving that accountability? Who is responsible for reporting that information on a weekly basis? So we have a person that is accountable for each one of those measurables and is accountable for each one of those goals. And then they come on a weekly basis and report all of those goals. So you're reporting on these items on a weekly basis. We pair it with a 13-week trend, so you can see how things are trending. You can see things are moving one direction or the other. Like Sarah, asked as far as changing things in crisis. Absolutely. If I had a client that is in the healthcare space and they were tracking retention of clients or repeat orders of clients, because they know that information historically, and they were finding that it was going down a little bit every week. So they knew once it got past the 90% mark, if they're only retaining 90% of their clients or only have repeat orders of 90%, then they were going to have to start making some changes in their business, whether it be people changes, pricing changes, whatever it might be. They knew that 10% was kind of the point where they were going to have to make changes, so they could start tracking that and predicting it on a weekly basis. That it was going down 1 or 2% every week for a few weeks, so they knew if it continued 3 or 4 weeks from now, they were going to be there. So they started being able to predict and starting to be able to handle that now, rather than waiting 3 or 4 weeks and doing it reactively. So this is the scorecard. This gives you a pulse on the business. This gives you the data to manage your business. Like I said, 5 to 15 items. You have to believe that what gets measured gets done. There's a lot of people that think that what gets measured gets measured. It's not necessarily what gets done. But I find that there's one of two things that happen when you start implementing a scorecard and start implementing data. First thing is that people love it. You can see what's actually happening, and it'll give you a pulse on your business, and it's great. The second thing is that people say scorecards don't work. I make the argument about 100% of the time, it's the people that aren't working, not the scorecard that's not working. That metric is the right one. That goal is the right one. It's the people behind those goals and metrics and measurables that are not working. So look at the people component there if you have questions on whether a scorecard works or not. Any questions on scorecard before we move on? You can ask any questions and we can come back as well, but anything before we move on from scorecard? We'll talk a little bit more about measurables, so I can come back to it if I need to. So the second item I wanted to discuss in that data component is measurables. So this is an example of a scorecard, let's say for the leadership team of an organization. So if you have one or two or three or five people on your leadership team, or if it's a leadership team of one or two, that's fine. This is the scorecard for the leadership team as an example. And those are this people if you're looking at your accountability chart or your organizational chart within your company. I think that every single department should also have a scorecard. So the marketing department, the sales department, the operations department has their own scorecard. They're looking at their own metrics. They're looking at their own measurables. And every single person within the departments also needs to be bringing information and bringing measurables and having something they're accountable for on a weekly basis. As you saw here, there's people listed as far as who's driving that accountability. I think every single person in the organization needs some sort of measurable that they're coming to a meeting every week that they're accountable for. It tends to get more tactical as you get further down the organization. It could be the number of phone calls you made, or it could be the number of desks you cleaned, or whatever it might be, but it becomes more tactical. Everybody in the organization has a measurable that they know they're doing the right thing and it's keeping them on track every week to push the organization forward.
And Nate, do you feel like just having everyone in the organization having a measurable creates buy-in for everyone in the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. I think not only buy-in, but I think that there's accountability. So I mean, accountability gets a bad rap. A lot of people don't think that people want to be held accountable, and I think it's exactly the opposite. I think that the people that don't want to be held accountable are the ones who don't want to do what they're being asked, or they're not the ones hitting their numbers. Most people that are high performers want to be held accountable. They want you to make sure that they're doing the right things. You have to inspect what you expect. So if you expect somebody to be doing something, you got to make sure that they are. And it's not micromanaging it at any level. It's here's the most important thing, 1 to 3 things that you do on a daily basis or on a weekly basis that pushes our organization forward. Let's report on those every week. We're going to hold you accountable. We're going to make sure that you're doing them. High performers welcome that accountability. So good question. I like it.
Yeah,
so
you got kudos here from Autumn.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so that is the scorecard, and then those are measurables. Everybody in the organization having a number that they're reporting on every week and making sure that they're being held accountable for that. So that's strengthening the data component, having a really good, solid scorecard, everybody in the organization having at least 1 to 3 measurables that they're reporting on a weekly basis. All right, we're going to move on to the issues component. So the issues component is made up of the issues list and IDS. We're going to talk about those both for just a second. So the issues list is making sure that there's every business, every organization, doesn't matter the size. If you're 1 person or you're 100 or 1,000, there's issues. There's things that are unresolved. So getting them out of your head and actually putting them on a piece of paper, so then you can set them up and knock them down and make them go away. So that's the first part, is making sure that they're not just in your head, they're actually on a piece of paper. It is also important to note that the issues list is more a culture within the organization, that anybody in the organization can raise their hand and say this is an issue. This is a challenge. This is an obstacle. This is an opportunity, and we need to solve it. We need to fix it. It's something that we need to address. Because you can have issues on an issues list, but if they're not the right issues, or everybody's holding back and nobody's sharing those issues, then it's not solving this or serving this purpose. The issues list is more a cultural buy-in that everybody feels like they can address issues. So within IDS, what does IDS stand for? It stands for identify, discuss, and solve. So when you're looking at each one of these issues, you're identifying the issue, we're discussing the issue, we're solving the issue. We find that even really good teams, everybody's really good about discussing things. And they discuss it, and they discuss, and they discuss, and they discuss, and they discuss, and they discuss. But rarely do they actually identify the root cause of the issue, and rarely do they get to a solve. So we take the issues list and we prioritize the first and the second and the third highest priority on our list, and we start solving them. I'll show you where this fits into the weekly meeting in a minute. So it's not just a concept that doesn't fit in. I'll show you where it belongs in the weekly meeting here in a second. But we're identifying the first, second, third priorities on the issues list. We take the first priority, we identify what the real issue is. A lot of times, the issue on the issues list is not the real issue. It's a symptom of whatever the issue is.
Right.
I'll give you an example. This is a couple months ago, sitting with the team, and they said, our daily huddles that we're doing, we need to decide if we're going to continue doing them or we're going to stop doing them. And I said, are you sure that's the real issue? Yes, we need to make a decision. I say we stop doing them. And somebody else says, well, I think we should keep doing them. I said, this is not the real issue. Why are we asking this? It's like, there's got to be a problem with the huddles. There's an issue with the huddles. You're not getting what you want from the huddles. There's something else here. This is not just like, that might be the solve. We need to decide whether we're going to do huddles or not, but that's not the real issue. So identify what the real issue is, dig in, figure out what the real issue is, identify the real issue, then discuss it. And once the conversation starts being redundant, Daniel's heard me say it many times, but if you say it more than once, then you're politicking.
Yeah.
So say what you got to say it once, make sure that everybody has felt like they've been heard. Doesn't have to be a democratic process, but everybody's felt like they're heard, and then you move on to a solve. So not just discussing it, but solve it. Most of the time we want that solve to be something that makes the issue go away forever. Sometimes it doesn't go away forever, but at least we're pushing it forward. A solve is an action item or a decision that's made on that issue. We were solving, I had an EOS client session yesterday. We were solving some pretty hairy, people issues. And it was a tough conversation. And I'm pushing them to a solve. I'm saying, we have to solve this. We have to have an action item. We have to have a decision. And finally, somebody said, I can't decide this right now. It's too big. I need time to think about it. I need to have a discussion with somebody. You're not going to like this, and I need this amount of time. And I said, you know what? That's a solve. You can think about it. You can have a discussion with somebody, and then you can have a decision by next Wednesday. That's an action item. That's pushing it forward. That's not just discussing it. That's actually solving it. Even if you have to discuss it again, it's not the same issue now, because you have had a conversation, you've pushed it forward, you're making a decision in a few days.
Yeah.
So we're solving an issue. After we do number one, it gets crossed off. We move on to number two. We solve number two, we solve number three. So that's the issues list. So we go through, make sure there's a list, we set them up, knock them down, make them go away forever, and we use that IDS process, identify, discuss, and solve. Do you have any issues that you've solved lately, Daniel, that you can talk about or use as an example? You don't have to if I'm putting you on the spot. But.
Yeah, I think we've as a team, we've talked quite a bit about just how to find solves for bringing more resources to our members during quarantine 2020. And so we've been recognizing, this is not our normal setup. And so how do we provide and equip the members of 36 Degrees North? And so we'll then identify, like, okay, you know, we've got to pivot, and we're identifying what that is. And when we discuss, honestly, I hear your voice in my head quite a bit around the politicking thing. Yes, it just a little Nate in my ear about, I can find myself, if I'm really married to an idea in our L10, I can kind of hear you pop up and just say like, yep, that's politicking right there. But just allowing like a healthy discussion for our team. And finding a solve even comes down to creating webinars like this one right here.
Cool. Yeah, so just discussing it, getting to a solve. I
Yep.
like it. All right, moving on to the traction component, where we're gonna talk about you know, rocks and how we have a great meeting. So setting goals and then having that meeting. And I think we're gonna get to the questions that Eric asked earlier. So if we don't get there, Eric, post something else. But I think we're gonna answer here in just a second. So the traction component. Let's see if we can get, there we go. All right, the traction component is comprised of two things, so rocks and then meeting posts, like I just said. So I'm going to take a step back and do a little high level, because Eric asked as far as the 10-year target and the 3-year picture. He asked a little bit different question, but I think it's a good segue into discussing higher level. So rocks are our 90-day goals. So put that in the back of your mind. I'm going to come back to it in just a second. How do we set 90-day goals? We need to make sure that they line up with our big picture. So we have a vision traction organizer, a VTO in the EOS world. It's a 1 page if it's printed front and back. If you don't print duplex, it's 2 pages. Still an overly simple vision traction organizer, a business plan for the organization. And 3 of the things that are on that VTO are your 10-year target. So your 10-year target is what you want from your business long-term. Daniel talked about it earlier. It really becomes your North Star. Where are you going long-term? And a lot of your decisions are pointed in that direction. It's shooting for the moon. We're going this direction. So what do you want from your business long-term? Doesn't have to be 10 years, but something long-term. So 5 years to 30 years. Most teams are somewhere between 5 and 10. But what do you want long-term? And then it becomes just your number 1 goal. It's the, you know, the BHAG if you're looking at different systems, but it's where you're going long term. And then you have your 3-year picture. So where are you going 3 short years from now? So what does this organization look like 3 years from now? We start with a few predictions. So what is your revenue? What is your profit? And what are your measurables going to be? That's number of clients. That's you know, number of new accounts. That's number of locations, whatever it might be. Revenue, profit, measurables. And then what does it look like? We're trying to paint the picture in our mind with what this organization looks like 3 years from now. So we should be able to close our eyes and picture it. And then what that does, so the 3-year picture does 2 things. It gets you closer to your 10-year target. So it gets closer to your long-term goal. And then it sets you up for really good 1-year planning. So if we want this organization to look like this 3 years from now, what do the annual goals have to be? So we start with the same predictions, revenue, profit, measurables, and then the goals for the year. So the 3 to 7 goals for 2020. And it's not 23 different priorities, because if you try to do 23 different things, you're going to get nothing accomplished. So it's 3 to 7 priorities for the year. I had this conversation with my client yesterday. They I won't tell you any names. They only hit about 25 or 30% of their rocks for the quarter. And then when we had that discussion, said, what do we need to do? We need to set better rocks. We need to set fewer rocks. We thought we could get a lot more done, and we really couldn't get that much done. That's the natural thing. We think we can get a lot more done than we actually can. So we have to prioritize what is actually going to get done. So when they were setting their goals yesterday, it was, I want to point out, we thought we could do a whole lot last time, and we couldn't get all of that done. So we need to really set priorities. So what are the 3 to 7 goals for the year? And we do the same thing with the rocks. So again, the rocks are 90-day items. What can we execute on for 90 days? And again, it's 3 to 7. I think less is more. I would much rather look at 3 items and 3 priorities for the next 90 days rather than 7, but I'm okay with 7. I would say if you get 3 or 4 done, then you can always add a couple more. Nobody's ever taken me up on that because we typically think we can do more than we actually can. So we go through the rock setting exercise, Daniel, but we go through and say, what are all the things that need to be accomplished in the next 90 days? And everybody throws everything out there that needs to be accomplished in the next 90 days. So when we do the quarterly meeting with 36 Degrees North, there's 3 people, they list 20 to 30 things that need to be done in the next 90 days. All of it can't get done. Even if you think all of it's going to get done, it's not going to get done. I'm not going to say that there's going to be a global pandemic every quarter. That's not going to happen, but there's going to be stuff that comes up every quarter. It may not be this extreme, but there's going to be things that come up. So let's prioritize. Rocks and goals are all about prioritizing. So let's prioritize the 3 to 7 things that we can get done in the next 90 days. Now, to answer Eric's question, if you're self-employed and you're setting long-term goals and 3-year plans and 3-year picture and 1-year goals, I absolutely think it's a good idea to run those by somebody else. I think you need to have some sort of, if it's not a personal board of directors, at least a few other people that you trust that are similar minded, that also see big picture, that also can challenge you. I know within the EOS model, we work on healthy teams. So we talk about the 5 dysfunctions of a team, and we talk about trust and those kind of things. So it's got to be somebody who you trust and to give you the feedback, because if you don't have the trust, then you're not going to have any sort of healthy conflict. Nobody can actually challenge you on what you're actually doing. But I absolutely think it's a good idea to have some sort of personal board of directors or a person or two to go through those with you, make some sense of them, and challenge you on those.
Or maybe even in a professional EOS implementer.
That's always a good place. I'm always happy to be a resource.
Yeah.
Especially if you're already asking those questions and you're already familiar with the models. So I'm happy to help.
Yeah.
All right, so just
oh yeah, I was just going to ask you, like on a rudimentary level, like why do we call them rocks?
Hey, look at that!
I'll tee you up. You hit it.
We didn't even practice this today, Daniel.
Yeah,
this is impressive. Right. Yes, so rocks goes back to the rocks and the pebbles and the sand and the water and glass jar, made popular by Stephen Covey. If you haven't seen the video, I'm sure you can go find it on YouTube, and it's a 30-year-old video, and it's entertaining what they're wearing, and it's a good video anyway. But rocks, pebbles, sand, glass jars. So rocks, we call them rocks because those are the big things. You have to start with the big things. So the glass jar, you got to put the big rocks in first, and then you got to put the pebbles and the sand. Those are all the smaller things and the daily activities and all the noise in your life and your daily routine. Have to get put in after the big things. So you have to work on the big things, have to set the rocks, have to have those priorities first, or everything else is just going to take over. So that first glass jar there, you put all the sand and the pebbles in first, and you can't fit the big things in. But if you put the big things in first and then put the pebbles and the sand around it, everything will fit, but you got to start by working on the big things. So the Focus by Al Reese, it's an older book called Focus, that the gist of it is you only have a few kilowatts of energy in your body. So the sun has billions of kilowatts of energy. You go outside and the most you're going to get is a sunburn. A laser has a few kilowatts of energy, but it's focused in a really, really small area, and it can cut glass, it can cut metal, it can be used as a military weapon. The point is, you only have a few kilowatts of energy, so you have to focus it in the right direction. I talked about earlier, as far as those rocks go, the 3 to 7 and less is more. The Harris poll was interesting. It was thousands of companies that were polled, and it said that 1 out of 3 don't understand your priorities as an organization. 1 out of 3 employees don't understand your priorities. 1 out of 5 don't care what your priorities are. And half of your employees don't know what they can do to help you in achieving your priorities. So we get to a point where everybody in the organization has rocks, everybody in the organization has priorities, and they're all lined up. That's why I showed you the 1-year goals, the 3-year picture, the 10-year target. Everything starts lining up. Even if you don't have those long-term things, set rocks now. Set It doesn't have to be 90 days. I think 90 days is the longest, in human psychology. It tells us that we can only execute for 90 days on something, and then we have to poke our head back up and check to make sure we're going in the right direction and then execute on something else for 90 days. But if it's less than that, see what it is for the next 30 days or 60 days or 90 days. Set some priorities. Call them rocks, call them goals, call them whatever you want to call them, but set those priorities. And like I said earlier, we discuss and we debate. That's how we come up with the priorities. When we set rocks for 36 degrees north, we throw all 30 things up on a whiteboard, and we discuss and debate and see what those priorities are. We can't get all 30 of them done. So what are the 5 things that we're committed to getting done over anything else? And then we walk out of the room arm in arm and say, these are the things that we're going to get accomplished, and we're all on the same page, and we're all rowing in the right direction.
How about, just to jump in with Eric's question here, should these rocks be stretch goals, or how often should you be hitting the goals? So you're talking about, the client company you're working with yesterday, and maybe you're giving some commentary on, like, they're only hitting 25% of their goals, and that's not a good mark. And we've talked about this a lot as a team, and you always tell us a good percentage of goals to hit would be.
That's a loaded question. You know it.
Yeah, I do know it.
What is it? You tell me then.
70%.
I'll say 80.
80%.
Okay, 80%.
Yeah.
80%. You were close.
Yeah.
80%. 80% of your goals should be accomplished. So I like stretch goals. I want them to be hard enough that they're difficult. But if we're hitting 100% of goals all of the time, then they're too easy.
Yeah.
So when I said earlier, that team that I was working with, this is a new team, and this is like their first set of rocks and first set of goals. It's a learned ability. I know it sounds kind of silly. Yep. And Daniel's been doing it for a long enough time that he knows that they get better. You get better at setting rocks, setting goals as you go on. So it's a learned ability, 80%. So I like stretch. Yep. I like, we set them SMART. So, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. But yeah, they should be stretch enough that they're scary. You should walk out of your quarterly meeting or your prioritizing session and say, I'm not sure how I can do that, but I'm committed to making it happen.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I hope that answers your question, Eric. And I can just say, autobiographically for 36 degrees north, that rocks have just been a game changer for our organization. For us being focused and really knowing this is what we are going to accomplish in the next 90 days. And then we're going to come back together in 90 days and talk about that. I mean, has been such a game changer of being an organization that's really focused.
Yeah. If you take nothing else from today, set some 90-day rocks, set some 90-day goals, have those priorities, and then check in on them on a weekly basis. Good segue into the meeting pulse. Yeah, so we have that 90-day world. We come up with a meeting pulse. So my 5 rules for a meeting are same day, same time, start on time, end on time, and same agenda. So those are the 5 rules that I have going into a meeting. And then I want to just go briefly over the meeting agenda that we use for the level 10. And then we'll finish, let's see, I'll do this in 5 minutes, and we'll have 5 minutes for questions. All right, so the level 10 meeting, we start with good news. So this is best and best. So we call this best and best. So this is the best thing that's happened to you personally and the best thing that's happened to you professionally in the last week. Does a couple different things, but it gets us a little bit of team building with the rest of the team, but it also gets us a natural segue into working on your business instead of in your business. We review the scorecard. We talked about the scorecard earlier. We are reviewing the scorecard line by line and seeing if it's on track or off track. Those are the only 2 words that come out of your mouth when you're reviewing the scorecard. Daniel, are you on track with this? On track, off track. That's it. And then we go through the rock review. We've set our priorities. We've said these are the 5 things that are the most important things that we're doing over the next 90 days. Are they on track or are they off track? Those are only 2 words out of your mouth when you're reviewing the rocks. Are they on track or are they off track? Customer employee headlines. What's going on with our team? What's going on with our customers? Checking in with everybody to make sure that they're happy and we know what's going on. These things are reporting only. So it's not discussing them in great detail at this level. If it's off track, then you can drop it down to the issues list, which we're going to get to in just a minute, but this is just on track, off track, and that's it. To-do list, so we interject a little bit of accountability on a weekly basis. Did you get the things done this week that you said you were going to get done? A lot of these have 60 minutes of a 90-minute meeting with the issues list. So IDSing all of the issues. We have a issues list that is constantly changing, everybody adding to it every day throughout the week. So you have a robust issues list on a weekly basis. There are issues in every business. So I think as you start listing them, you'll realize that there's probably more things than you realize, but that is the meat and potatoes of this meeting. So this is what you should be spending most of your time, obviously 60 minutes of the 90-minute meeting, solving issues. If the scorecard or the rocks are off track, you drop it down to the issues list. Then you have your issues list, you prioritize 1, 2, 3, like we just talked about, and you say, let's IDS that issue first. And then when it's done, we cross it off the list. And then when we move on to issue number 2, we IDS that. Sometimes 60 minutes, you can IDS 2 things if they're big. Yesterday with 3 people issues, it was an exhausting and grueling issue solving track because they were big issues. Sometimes they're not as big and you can get 10 or 12 issues done in 60 minutes. It just kind of depends on what they are, but you're prioritizing the most important things on a weekly basis. So it's not the easiest things, it's not the things you want to knock out. What are the most important things during that week? And then you move on to conclude. So a simple conclusion of reviewing the to-dos, making sure that we know what we're supposed to do for the next week. Are there any cascading messages that need to come out of this meeting and go to the rest of the team? And then we rate the meeting. Like Daniel said, we want it to be a 10. There's no reason to have a meeting unless it is a level 10. What's the average of your meetings, Daniel?
A 9.
Okay. My goal.
For a functioning organization, Nate.
Yeah, no, my goal is 8.75. So I as long as above 8.75, I'm good. But there's no reason to have a level 10 meeting unless, or no reason to have a meeting unless it is a level 10. So that's the traction component. So setting rocks, making sure that everybody has priorities, and then having that really good meeting result or meeting pulse will get you results. So those are the 6 key components. I know we talked about 3 of them today. There's other things, there's more detail I can give you if you need them. I'm going to share just a few resources with you. You can go to eosworldwide.com. You can find the Traction library there. You can find the Traction book and the other books within the Traction library. There's a lot of downloadable tools, videos. Basecamp is joined there, so you can have a lot of different EOS Implementer tools. Or you can get this goofy guy to help you as well. So I'm more than happy to be a resource for anybody, talk to anybody. One of my core values is helping first, so I will help people as much as I possibly can. So reach out anytime. So here's my final thoughts. Choose and use a system. So if it's not the EOS system, choose something and use it, and you will get more of what you want out of your business if you choose and use a system. That's it. That's all I got.
Awesome. We'd love to field a few questions if you guys have some questions. And then Mahal just commented and she just said these rocks and scorecards are great reminders. I'd like to use them with my family as well. And she said, are the tracking sheets available, the EOS tracking sheets for the meetings, are those available for download?
Yeah, the meeting pulse for sure. There's a great whiteboard video for the meeting pulse as well. I can share that with you, Daniel, and then you can get it to whoever. I totally agree on family as well. We use some of this. That's a different webinar, but we use some of these tools within our family as well. Believe me, we're not perfect, but they're good tools to use in the family as well.
Cool. All right, we've got just a little bit more time here. If there are any other questions, Nate would love to field those.
I would love it.
All right, my friends.
I'm just gonna show you, Daniel. I asked one of my clients to give me a testimonial a few months ago, and I said, "Don't use EOS and don't use my name." And then he used it like 7 times. That's beside the point. But the items there in orange, I think, are the most important things. That the team's working together, focused, executing. Whole team's excited about the future. Company hitting on all cylinders. So use the tools, use the system, use EOS.
Yeah.
I'm not saying use me, but the tools and the systems out there that you can implement a lot of it on your own as well. So
yeah. Well, I know that I can give a testimonial too and just say you've transformed our organization too. And so you may not say use me, but I will tell everybody on the call you should use Nate because he's so fantastic. So, well, Nate, thank you for your time and doing this webinar here. There's lots of thank you very much. This has been helpfuls that are going on in the comments. So thank you for doing this. This has been good education for all of our members and for people in Tulsa. So thanks a lot, and we really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, and I will be glad to field any more phone calls or help or get on any more Zoom calls and answer any more questions they may have.
Cool. Wonderful. Well, Nate's information's on the screen here if you want to contact him or reach out to me, and we can get you connected to Nate too.
Thank you, Daniel.
See you guys later.
See ya.